strands of research that we told NSF we would be pursuing with this project. So we do research on curriculum implementation, student outcomes of STEM ID, and teacher outcomes. I'll give you a little sense for what each of those strands looks like. Okay, so for curriculum implementation, I think Melton kind of referenced this, or Jeff referenced this a little bit earlier. We're really interested in how the curriculum is being used and how it works in different school settings. So notice we do research on fidelity of implementation broadly. We do want to know kind of like how much of this you're able to do, but we're really most interested in how certain critical components of the curriculum work. So this little figure here lists out what we have figured out with our curriculum team are the critical components of STEM ID. So when we're in classrooms observing, when we're looking at interview data, when we're looking at a lot of our different data sources, what we're doing is looking to see, like, okay, so how is the engineering design process working? How is math science integration working? What are teachers doing related to those things? So that we can get a sense for how STEM ID is working overall. So we're not really measuring kind of the precise amount of the curriculum teachers do, or whether they do it up to a certain standard we have in mind or some ideal. It's really about, okay, we have this curriculum, when we put it out in real classrooms, how is it used and what does it look like? So this is the framework that we use to do that. So one thing to note is certain of these components, we think of these as like, if you're making a recipe, these are the ingredients that need to be there, right? If something's not in there, it's going to taste funny, right? If you forget about something, or you put something in there that's completely wrong, and if you use sugar instead of salt, it's now no longer the same recipe, right? So if one of these things is completely missing from how you're doing STEM ID, it's probably not the same flavor of STEM ID that we had in mind, right? So we're just really interested in those components. So we look at how it works in diverse settings, how students and teachers are using the curriculum, and then because we're all working in very interesting and different contexts, we've been doing a lot of research around what are the different contexts and the factors in your schools and in your work related to students, related to teachers, related to the organizations that you're working in that influence what you're able to do with STEM ID. Okay, so we get at that mostly with interviews, but also observations. So the next strand, just for your information, I had to include this map because I'm really proud of this map. Melton has done a ton of work recruiting, and we've done a lot of work to kind of broaden STEM ID, and each year we've added sites on this map. So just so you all know, these are all the places the STEM ID is happening next year. So we're in 13 schools. Okay, so for student outcomes, we're looking at what is the effect of STEM ID on academic performance of engineering, science, and mathematics, and what is the effect of STEM ID on social emotional outcomes like engagement, STEM career interests, math science anxiety, self-efficacy. So when we met in our recruiting conversations, I think we shared the bar chart with you that showed that when we did this project in Griffin, we found that students who were in STEM ID for at least 2 years had statistically significantly higher math and science performance on milestones, and we also found positive effects in these social emotional outcomes. So we don't collect this data in every school, but we'll be collecting it in all of our Gwinnett schools. And then in our CAB schools, we'll also be focusing on our third strand of research, which is teacher outcomes. So one of the research questions, and one of the reasons I'm taking copious notes during this professional learning, is that we're interested in how does the professional learning that teachers do influence self-efficacy and teaching practice. So how does what you're learning today and tomorrow, and as you go into the classroom and continue connecting with each other, how does that influence what you're able to do in the classroom? And we're also interested in the relationship between how you implement STEM ID and student and teacher outcomes. Okay, so looking at things like teacher self-efficacy and how that may shift over the course of the project, and how that may interact with different ways that teachers are implementing the curriculum. Okay, so I sent out a link to a survey, and some of you have already taken it. Thank you. If you have not taken it, please by the end of the day tomorrow. That's meant to be baseline data, so we want to collect that as soon as possible so that we have your kind of baseline levels and how you respond to those survey items at the very beginning of your work with us. So if you could just make sure you take a few minutes to do that survey, it doesn't take too long, that would be super helpful. Okay, so I mentioned our data collection. We collect a lot of different data, quantitative and qualitative, including interviews. We ask you to complete implementation surveys. So I'll be sending out some links closer to when school starts. They're very short surveys. They take maybe 5 minutes, maybe even less, because they're for each of the challenges. And really, all they are is a list of the student and teacher kind of activities. What if you were doing the challenge as it's described on the website, what sorts of things would we expect to happen in your classroom? And you just check off whether or not those things happened. And the main reason for that is because we're not able to observe in every school over the course of every challenge of STEM ID. We just don't have the capacity. We'd love to be there, but we can't be. So this is our way of those implementation surveys of you telling us what happened, okay? And we also do some observations. We do kind of purposive selection is what we call it. So we identify a subset of schools to observe in every semester, and we'll follow up with you if we'll be coming out to observe in your school. Usually what we do is pick like a 2-week period to focus observations on, so we're not anywhere, we just don't have the bandwidth to be anywhere the entire semester, but we do like to pick a couple schools and just spend some focused time there to learn about how STEM ID is happening. I'll also say that the observations we do are really focused on observing the curriculum and how it works. So of course we're observing your teaching and we're observing your students, but it's not really about assessing or evaluating your teaching. It's about just seeing what happens with the curriculum. Okay, so please, if you have any apprehension about people observing in your classroom, I get it, but don't worry about us like evaluating your teaching at all. We're really there just to learn what's happening. Okay, and then we also do a lot of student assessment data analysis, and we have surveys and an engineering design process assessment that we have students do. Again, this won't be in every school, and we'll reach out to you on plans for that if you're included in that. Milton, did you have anything to add about data collection? Okay.
No.
All right, cool. One thing to note is that all of our research has been approved by the Institutional Review Board, the IRB, both at Georgia Tech and at both of the districts. So the district's on board with what we're doing. We'll send that approval letter to your principals. We've already kind of reached out to them so they're aware, but we'll make sure that they also have that document. So everything is kind of legit and above board. Yeah?
Is there any type of permission we need to get from parents or?
Good question. So we were able to, so in DeKalb, we're focusing our research on that teacher strand. So we're not actually collecting any direct data from students. So in DeKalb, we won't need to do that. In Gwinnett, we were able to have a procedure where we send home an informational letter to parents, and parents, there's information in that letter if they don't want their student to participate, who they should contact. So they don't need to bring anything back. It's more of an opt-out. Parents can opt their student out if they don't want them. So you'll just be sending something home.
So is that because DeKalb will allow, like, is it the bandwidth on your end, or DeKalb just doesn't want to do the student information?
I think eventually DeKalb actually is very interested in student outcomes from our discussions with Eric. I think it was a couple things. One of the things is our student results are longitudinal. So we're most interested in collecting that data in places where we can look at trends over time and how students perform. And because you guys are coming on toward the end of the project, we probably aren't going to have years and years of data from students.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing was just practicality. We don't have the bandwidth to necessarily collect all that data. And timing. We needed to, you guys came on board pretty quickly. We wanted to make sure that we could keep it as simple as possible and get it approved. That might change in the future, and we'll let you know if we update.
I hope it does.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so just to wrap up, I wanted to share, some of us are in this room, but this is our STEM ID team.
There are even more of us.
Yeah, there are even more. I fit who I could on the slide. Jeff, I noted, is retired but still here. I don't know if we can have that as an official title, but yeah, so this is kind of our core team. Who did I miss, Welton? Who's not up here? We have, okay, so up on top, you'll see this is kind of our leadership level, and then Sunny Newton is one of our researchers. So there's Roxanne Moore, who Jeff talked about earlier, was one of the co-developers of the curriculum. And all these folks on the bottom really help us get all the work done. So you may see any of these people in your classroom at some point. We send out Dr. Jasmine Choi, Diane Baptiste Porter, Talia, Carrie helps with our data collection. Brian even helps with data collection, so it's kind of an all hands on deck situation. But you may see any of us, and I love being out in school. It's my favorite part of my job. So I try to schedule as much of that as possible. But yeah. Any questions? One thing I'll note for our in-classroom research, the first quarter for DeKalb, we probably won't come out too much because we like to just let you get your feet wet. But one of the really cool things we're excited about is you get like 4 iterations with it. So we'll get to hopefully come out and see kind of how it develops over time as you get more and more used to it. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Have you found that like, it's more effective in 6th grade, it's more effective in 7th grade, it's more effective in 8th grade? Are you looking at individual grades, or are you looking at it as a program as a whole? Right? Because I just having taught 1 year of the program, 1 year, 8th grade is just way more, they're awesome. They're way more buy-in. 6th grade is just not good.
Mine is the exact opposite. All my buying is for 6th grade. 8th graders sit there and think they don't have to do.
Now, it could have been, again, I'm only going on 1
Right.
year, right? Our 6th grade year was wildly just one of the worst grade levels I've had in a while, and that could be part of it.
We also just don't like the other kids.
And,
I'm saying they're my favorite.
The older the better for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we do parse it by grade level. We're interested in how each grade level is working. But mainly we're looking like at those critical components across grade levels and how those work. You know, does engineering design process work differently for 6th graders versus 8th graders? How is it working with these particular activities? But just what we just witnessed where it was opposite for you guys, that's pretty much how it happens. Like, you ask one teacher what STEM ID looks at, you've heard about what STEM ID looks like in one school. Like, it's different everywhere you go. That's what makes it like really interesting for us to see.
so you have the 13 schools, those are the ones that are doing the research, right, or helping you with the research. Are there other schools that used to do STEM ID and they don't do it anymore? Is there any contact
That's a good
with those
question.
schools? Like,
So-
they did it and they
Yeah.
no longer do it, like a good question, would be like, okay, why are you not still using this curriculum? What
Yeah.
are you doing?
It's great
It's not
questions.
like they decide not to do it. It's more like teacher moves to another school, they
Yeah,
change
okay.
subject.
Right,
As you know, engineering teachers,
yeah,
they're like, we need a science teacher, so they put in the science classroom.
right,
It was never, we had a school, to be honest, like consciously, I'm not going to STEM ID anymore.
okay.
Right.
It was more like, I'm moving to another school, another district, things like that.
Or the school eliminating their engineering program is unfortunately
Right.
common.
Yeah, in our original school district, they actually continued to do it until recently, like 2 years ago. As a small school district, unfortunately, lost all their engineering teachers. School district decided to pivot, not to do engineering for a year. So I don't know, I haven't checked with them about what happened. It's very Spalding school. But yeah, we never had any school district, like, I'm not sure what this or school saying it. It's just, you know, it's education, things change
Right.
so rapidly.
Yeah.
Yep. Any more questions related to research? Again, you'll be getting emails and information with more specifics as we go forward. Cool.
Right. Right.
Brian's
Right.
hair.
Right.
Brian's soul patch.
When was that picture taken, man?
Huh?
When was that picture taken? Oh,
When did you shave the soul patch?
Huh?
When did you shave the soul patch?
19.
Like, I didn't even have glasses.
Yeah, the same day, same time I had hair, had better vision.
All right. Was Jaden also connected?
Yeah, that was my question. I'm glad you-
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give everybody a little bit of break.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Here, sorry. Thank you.